Guys, welcome back to a brand new video on the channel. Instead of today's video, we're going to be doing a complete cheat sheet for you guys for ranked in this season. So not too many days left of the season, but there's at least a couple of weeks until the new update and until any more balance changes arise. So we've had some monthly finals to take a look at. I've taken a look at a lot of competitive data for you guys. Big thanks to Demore. I'll put a link to their Twitter in the description. But yeah, of course, I've been watching and casting over monthly finals, so I've got a good understanding of the meta right now. So as I always say, this is normally a cheat sheet. I can't go fully in depth into all of these maps and the way to draft, but once a ranked update does come out, it's been supposedly happening for a long time, I'll be going really deep into ranked when the update drops, by the way. So let's start off with Bounty Dry Season. So Bounty Dry Season, in terms of the meta, you will see this same reoccurrence here, that blue star brawlers maybe aren't as important as in previous metas, but especially in dry season, extremely important. I can't stress enough, because the literally strategy is in pro play, you get that blue star and you push back. So you either, the enemy either picks like a Mortis or Cars, and you're like, okay, they're going to get the blue star, and then you need to find a way to either shoot around walls or break walls on a map like dry season. Nori is going to be a fantastic brawler for the blue star as well. Star Nova can do a little bit of flexing, so she can be pretty good at that. But as I always say with drafting, you got to have a bit of everything involved. Throws on as prevalent as a last pick, but it's still got to make sure that you've got some form of like aggression, health, or a wall break, so you don't get countered by that. Don't go through the same brawlers. You're going to be good in dry season. I'm moving on to Hideout. So with Hideout, it plays a little bit differently to some other bounty maps. The way that it plays out, you normally get that blue star. You normally send like 2 people down the left and 1 person down the right. So there's a couple of strategies here, but as always, like, I can teach you things about the cheat sheet. But at the end of the day, you've got to be having good knowledge of learning how to counter the opposition, but also making sure that you've got all your covers, all your bases covered for the last pick. So last picks aren't that important. Make sure you ban in bolt. That's probably really about it on this map. Again, you've got to have a little bit of everything. I think in terms of what I really enjoy on this map, you want that one kind of flexible brawler that's going to create some pressure, whether that be a Max, whether that's going to be a Gene, Byron. It's going to support that aggro brawler. Again, you want that good damage dealer. Then you either want like a controller last pick or an aggressive last pick. And on to Bounty Layer Cake. Here, your best picks on your screen right here. So this is the one bounty map that literally performs so much differently than every single one in the game. This is where a lot of bounty rules just go out the window, because it's all about your aggression and it's all about how you can support that. So typical first picks that I've really enjoyed on this map, Surge is really good on this. He's starting to dissipate out of the bounty and knockout meta now, but particularly on this map, he's still very good because there's a bunch of walls, so he can easily, you got to keep your super, by the way. Don't use your super from spawn. You got to keep it, pressure up, and then you should be good to go. People are really enjoying this map because that box gadget is just so good on this map and very overpowered. Rico is one that's creeped into the meta, very good on a map like Layer Cake. Again, you want a little bit of everything here. I absolutely recommend that you need a blue star aggro brawler no matter what here, because you need pressure. Pressure will literally win you the game in Layer Cake. If you can force your opponents back into spawn, you pair your aggressive brawler with like a ranged brawler, and then in between, whether it be a damage, maybe even another range as well, you're going to eventually chip the opponents down. That's what you see a lot in competitive play. My underrated picks here got to be the likes of like Berry can be really underrated here. I think Ruff's extremely underrated. Rico as well. And on to Shooting Star here, your best picks on your screen right here. So Shooting Star, funny enough, the meta shifted a little bit because you're seeing a bit of, well, we've seen Brock. Brock normally, previous meta isn't that great on Shooting Star, since the buff is very good. Max as well, really dominant. 8-bit, Star Nova, Nori, just to constantly be jumping over onto that wall and constantly pushing up to that unbreakable wall. So again, you're starting to see Naja creep up a little bit more. Piper is an amazing brawler to go right now in Shooting Star, since the damage buff really strong. There you got your pierces. So I always recommend, Piper can be a bit risky at the earlier draft, but if the likes of like Nani and Max are banned out, then you can pretty much safely go the Piper. Last picks, I won't worry too much about last pick, as long as like you need a okay in between brawler. By that I mean like you might need like a Jae Young in the middle, or Gray in the middle, or Max, a Gene. If you haven't got these types of half aggressive brawlers, you're going to get last pick countered by a Mortis or a Sprout or something along those lines. So don't just literally go 3 snipers. I know you might want to go it, but Shooting Star, need a couple of snipers and then in between. So now we've got Brawl. Moving on to center stage here, your best picks for center stage. So center stage is always a little bit of a weird one, because it's just a lot of the time it can be so chaotic, because it can just all be about that bush control. So again, you don't want to go too many of those longer range brawlers, you want some brawlers that are going to create chaos, that are going to apply the pressure. So that's why I really enjoy in this map, particularly M's, for example, because you can switch up the gadget and just, you're going to instantly gain control. If you can just sneak into the bush once, often that will correlate into map control, and you'll just eventually be able to turn that pressure into a goal. That's why I really enjoy as well your likes of Mo, because Mo can just constantly poke the opponents, and then with the vision gear, and then once you get hypercharge, you're just guaranteed to get a goal at that point. In terms of your first picks, those are always going to be the standard ones. Late picks as well, again, not the most polarizing, because I think with the meta being so damage orientated, you're going to struggle for a lot of it. But you know, if the odd chance that the opponent goes like 2 brawlers with low damage, you can just insta pick an Ash, you can insta pick a Shade, or along those lines. Those are the best class picks in this meta. And as your control brawlers, again, you can definitely pair some of these together, but there's just so many damage dealers in this meta. I'd probably try and aim for the control brawlers that counter for damage dealers, so like the Ruffs, the berries and Beetles. Those are the good ones to counter with. So now moving over to Pinball Dreams, here, your best picks on your screen right here. So Pinball Dreams is, I'd say in most pros' minds, their worst nightmare in terms of draft. And it's not the worst map in the world, but it is so easy to get out drafted here. There's so many combinations you can go, so do bear that in mind. You can be very inventive in the draft here, because there's just a bunch of pools. So that's why you see typically Throws pretty strong here. Probably should have put Willow a little bit higher up in terms of rankings here, because she can just be so good down the lane. You need either a thrower or a pressure brawler. You want one or the other, because again, like, throwers are just so good at scoring goals, like a Willow, or just gaining control. The pressure brawlers are going to be really good at just pushing up the map and again getting your control of the map itself. So in terms of your mid interactions, you got to be careful that you're not picking too early on like a Meg or someone that's just going to lose a mid interaction, because the enemy could easily just pick like a Pierce or a Rico or something that would just easily win that mid interaction. So do be a bit wary of that. Again, you need your damage dealer in there, whether that be a wall breaker or not, it is up to you. There's not many wall breakers in the meta. There's a couple of really underrated picks that I really enjoy in this map. You've got M's again pushing up. You've got the gadget that can shoot for a wall called Dealers. He's going to be the most underrated brawler on this map. He can counter tanks and he can counter throws as well, so I really enjoy him in Pinball Dreams. So for Brawl, we have Sneaky Fields here, best picks on your screen right here. So as I always say, this plays so similar to Center Stage, because it's a super bushy map. It's all about gaining that bush control, although it's a little bit easier to know whereabouts your enemies are, because you haven't really got much wriggle room, right, unless you lose control of that mid bush. So as I always say, making sure that you don't go like 2 range brawlers. You know, you can have one in there because those can counter the damage dealers, but more often than not, you know, your brawlers that are going to push into the grass, you know, like your Otises, your M's that have a little bit of health, just gaining control of that grass is going to be the key to victory here. So again, you know, pressure brawlers are pretty good in terms of like your tanks and your assassins, but it is pretty hard to play and it will have a good matchup into most. So I'm seeing some flaws in a lot of people's drafts where again they'll go like the Meeples and the Swoosh together in combination. That's why you can easily go that pressure brawler last pick, but there's not a lot of free matchups for pressure brawlers in this meta. So yeah, Sneaky Fields, all about vision gear and pushing into the bushes. Lastly, for Brawl, we have Triple Dribble here. Best picks on your screen right here. So again, Triple Dribble, very much like Pinball Dreams, where there's a lot of rock, paper, scissors going on, where throwers are going to be pretty dominant. But then you've got aggro picks that can push down the right-hand lane. If talking about your spawn point there, you can easily go like a Kenji or an Ash or Mina. It's going to push up to that right wall. Again, throws are going to be pretty good, but other than throws, you've got like the Meeple in the middle that is just extremely strong on this map. You've got your Loomies that are extremely strong. You've got your Otises that are able to pinch, your Griff, etc. Honestly, you don't really see that many flex control brawlers, and I'll put it down on there, but I would consider a lot of damage dealers also pretty flexible as well, so do bear that in mind. You pretty much want to pick from the damage dealer category. Most of the time you're going to be good. Again, make sure you're covering that last pick. So again, there's like a couple of throws, good last picks. Shades, really strong last pick, but I think most time you can cover your base and just ban Shade, ban a thrower, and you should be good. Really, I think Edgar is probably the only one that you got to worry about last pick. It's all about just selecting the best damage dealers. So now moving on to Gem Grab. I'm going to fly through these pretty quickly because there's actually 7 of these maps instead of 6. Don't know why, but it's still glitched. So Crystal Arcade is a competitive map at the moment. Crystal Arcade, it all comes down to how well your gem carrier can win its mid, but then also pinch down the lane. It is just a quite spawn drop heavy map, and wall breakers will favor you pretty well. So a couple of picks I really like here. Rico is just, you can't beat Rico on the lane on this map in my opinion. You can break the walls. Stu isn't even a counter to Rico anymore, so just bear that in mind. Rico is so dominant on this map, same with Ruffs as well. So on this map, I mean, it's pretty hard to make aggro's work, but they can work as a late pick. But again, I'll just rather just have like a range brawler, a brawler that deals an insane amount of damage, and then as your gem carrier, again, making sure that you're getting the best one available. Max, Meg, really good ones. Crow, we've seen in competitive pretty recently, really good. Stu as well, can be good as a lane and a mid. Next we have Deathcap Trap. So I haven't played this, but I keep seeing people play it on stream or whatever else. But Deathcap Trap plays very similar to Crystal Arcade in like there's a few key walls that can be destroyed. But again, this map actually favors a lot more the aggros actually when you think about it, because if that aggro can get into that left top pocket, into those bushes, you can create a lot of chaos. So do that, actually bear that in mind. So as always, you want that good defensive gem carrier. We've got a bit of survivability, so all of the gem carriers that I've listed have got some way that they're going to survive or deal a lot of damage to the enemies. Again, you want one like damage control brawler that is going to be able to protect your gem carrier and also deal some damage itself, playing aggressively. And then I would normally, like, throws aren't worth it or control brawlers aren't really worth it as a last pick here. I'll just rather just go pressure brawler pretty much at all times and just pick your best selection. There's so many to choose from. So we have double swoosh. So this again plays pretty similar to like Undermine. It's a very bushy map. So as always, like I say, your gem carrier's got to be good at scouting the bushes. So apply the vision gear, make sure you've got some good survivability here. And I'm seeing a lot of grey cheese on this map, in particular paired with an Ems. People aren't going it too much in ranks, but in competitive play, it's very, very strong. So do bear that in mind. Your late picks are going to be very dangerous here, again, because in gem grab, even though there's a lot of damage brawlers, there's just so much turnaround potential with these assassins. So I highly recommend going them no matter what. Now moving on to Gem Fort. Again, the pros' worst nightmare. Over in the region of East Asia, I don't know why they love this map so much. Maybe they embrace the chaos, but again, it's extremely chaotic. So you've got to remember that you can't just control the game the entire time. So what I absolutely recommend is that you go with a good gem carrier, of course, with good damage and survivability, and it's able to get out of a sticky situation. You need your pressure brawler at all times. You need a brawler that can turn around the game at any given point. Just make sure that you're picking out of the bed. Like literally all of these are fine, as long as you're being very selective on who you're facing off against. You know, Ash, you want to be facing off against the Stews and Megs, etc. And then you need to get like a damage brawler. You need a brawler that is good inside the bushes, that can turn around the game and counter those assassins. That's all you need on Gem 4. So we've got Hard Rock Mine. Hard Rock Mine plays pretty much similar to how it always does, but Rico is extremely back in the meta right now, and he's one of my favorite picks. It is often banned out though, because ranked typically they overrate Rico a little bit more than usual, but it's definitely not overrated on this map in particular. So with Hard Rock Mine, again, you need that one pressure brawler that's going to get into the enemy grass. You need one brawler in the mid that's going to be able to beat the other mid out, but also again able to survive those sticky situations. A lot of those gem carriers right now wouldn't really be gem carriers in previous metas. You know, your Crows, your Stews, even like Pearl is a really big resurgence in this meta. And then again, you want your control damage brawlers, but a lot of these control brawlers can still apply the pressure onto the enemy gem carrier whilst also dishing out some good damage. And then you always need a good assassin or tank. Next we have Rustic Arcade here, your best picks on your screen right here. So yes, it is a super long range map, but don't get sucked into the fact that like it's super long range, so just only go that, because you're just bound to get countered by those assassin late picks. This is a common theme that a lot of people make, and especially if, you know, a Mortis or a Damien gets to the unbreakable wall, it makes it really hard for a sniper to do anything. Like I often play this map a lot of the time is, again, I go like a Damien or whatever, and I just know eventually, like, I'm going to die a lot, but eventually I'm going to kill the gem carrier and get out of those gems. And that's all that matters in there. It doesn't matter about your KD, it just matters about whether you can time things correctly and get kills onto the gem carriers. So again, gem carriers are going to be typically, I mean, what you could even do in some cases, because it is a very sniper-based map, you could even pick your gem carrier towards the end of draft, to be honest, because you could also just counter out the like enemies comp easily by just picking a sniper at the end of a draft. But I definitely wouldn't recommend it early on, because if the opponents pick like a Piper early on the draft, you know, you could just easily go a Lily or a Bolt or a Mortis and just consistently chase the Piper down. So you've got to bear that in mind. What I really enjoy on Rustic Arcade is so long range brawlers, but also brawlers that can pinch down the lane pretty easily. And lastly for gem grab, we have Undermine. So a classic in gem grab and in ranked. As I always say with Undermine, It's all about the first engagement. Make sure you win control of your lane using the vision gear if needed. Make sure to play it as slow as possible, because once you lose that lane, best believe it's going to be impossible to gain it back. So make sure you also, if you lose that lane, try and win it back a little bit, but if not, just go down the other lane and help win at least one lane. Again, it's an extremely turnaround based game, so I always recommend one assassin or tank. I always recommend a brawler that is good with vision gear, and again, a gem carrier that is going to be able to defend themselves easily. Now I'm going to be moving over to Heist. Bridge Too Far is the first map. So Bridge Too Far is always an interesting one. Yes, range will win most of the time, but you want that range to correlate to damage. So I realized I probably should have put Piper up a little bit higher, because Piper can be a good safe damage brawler, but at the same time, you do run the risk of the opponents, you know, just picking an alley or picking a nanny to counter that one out. So with Bridge Too Far, yeah, I don't think defenders are as prevalent as before. Yeah, you want to make sure that you got one brawler that's kind of capable of defending, but at the same time, only really Kaze and Melody are that great in Heist, and even so, I think Kaze is the biggest one that you've got to worry about. So you want one flexible brawler that can turn offense to defense, which in a perfect example of this is like a Lola. I've been finding Piper isn't like the best defender, but again, she can confirm kills, and that can enable you to get map control. You know, Nani's good for this reason as well. You know, defenders aren't always exactly the best brawlers to have in the world, but I only have one of them at maximum, because you can get overrun pretty easily on a map like this. Next up for Heist, we have Hot Potato. So here are your best picks on your screen right here. Hot Potato reminds me very much like Pit Stop. Not completely like it though, because it is sometimes a little bit harder where range can actually win a lot of the time, but you want the same types of brawlers. So what I've learned, especially from watching Foot and good teams play in Pit Stop, you want to be able to cycle out your respawns pretty well. Like if someone's going to go up and die, most of the time you want your defender to then go up, and especially if that defender can deal some good damage as well, even better. So that's why Otis is exceptional as a defender. Same goes for Lumi as well. Cordelius, your first picks, you know, Rico is absolutely insane here. You've also got good safe damage brawlers. I always recommend having one of these at least. Even into a tough matchup, you need somebody to release the pressure. There's a few instances in Hot Potato where the map can just turn into a complete troll fest, but more often than not, you know, the brawlers, the team that is going to apply the most pressure are just going to win the game. So we have Kaboom Canyon here, the best picks on your screen right here. So for Kaboom Canyon, it's got the same Heist brawlers, right? Like you got your Maxes are going to play it really aggressive with, your Colts, whatever. I am finding Colt to be a little bit easier, like to get counter, like you can counter Colt a bit easier in this meta, but it's still Colt at the end of the day. You get left on the high safe, you can deal an insane amount of damage. So I will still say, like, your defenders are pretty good. Not exactly needed here, because yeah, you can go defender or a range, like that in between. One of the others is going to be fine, but you do run the risk of, if you're facing off against a really good Kaze player or a car or whatever, it's going to be really hard to deal with. So I will say the one brawler that I've been really struggling against right now is Carl in this meta. The recent damage buff is insane. You can use Flying Hook to get in behind the enemy lines so easily on a map like this. Again, you want your flexible brawler, but it's going to have good control of the middle, but then also can be a bit of a defender if needed. So, you know, like a Meg or a Crow can be good at defending, and then they turn that defense into offense. Your late picks aren't really that important on Kaboom. And lastly for Heist, we have Safe Zone. So here you can see the best picks on your screen right here. The most annoying pick for me on this map absolutely has to be Penny. There are a few counters to Penny though in the competitive meta, like you see in the likes of Carl appear in the meta. He's really good into that Penny. You've got like Brock as well, a few others, but Penny's just kind of relentless in terms of your pressure. Defenders again can be pretty good, but I'd rather a lot of the time in this meta you don't actually need a defender as such, because often you can just use like a range brawler and then your flex brawler to pinch out that aggressive brawler, you know, that goes down in the left top bottom corner, whatever. That usually is the recipes for success here. Then you absolutely need a safe damage brawler. You need someone that's going to go on the aggressive. Now moving on to Dueling Beetles here. Best picks on the screen right here. So Dueling Beetles has changed over the years, but it's a pretty easy map to draft on in my opinion. You've just got to make sure that you've got everything covered. So by that, like, you need like one decent zone time brawler. So whether that's a Grey M's cheese combination, whether it's a Finks, whether it's a Berry later on in the draft, you know, Globert and Poker are very good alternatives as well. Max as well, super strong in this meta. Damage and control, you know, you've got Griff, who's insane in this meta. You've got likes of Lumi, very strong, but got to remember that you can get outranged on a map like this. Crow can be a great counter to a lot of the meta brawlers still, so still pretty strong up there. You know, Ruffs as well, you can never go wrong with Ruffs because he pairs pretty well with everything. And then Pressure, pressure towards the high skill players. If you can just get a good pressure brawler, you're going to carry most of the time, right? So you just need a combination of all. Next up for Hot Zone, we have Open Business. So with Open Business, it is quite a simple map to draft on a lot of times. You can see just love a map like this because you can go a bit of everything. I think the key mistake that I make often on this map is that I don't go the pressure brawlers that are needed to win. So for example, I'm not going to like a lot of high health brawlers. So you know, your Minas and your Kenjis are the brawlers that I shy away from, but are just so good on a map like this because they can push up to those walls and it will just enable you and your teammates to then find some free kills. So as always, you want to go zone time brawler, whether it's a great M's cheese, you know, Berry's very good here, Finks as well, a lot of great options. You want your damage brawlers as well. And then it's either pressure or a bit of extra damage as well. You know, don't always need a pressure brawler, but a lot of times there are so many free matchups that you can go them with and you'll just get control of the map easily. Next up, we have my favorite map, Parallel Plays. So with Parallel Plays, honestly, I don't even know how to draft on this map most of the time, but it's key that you need to establish a little bit of sense of how to play this map. So you've got one defensive brawler, so whether that's an Ems, Charlie, Otis, whether that's a Surge, whether that's even a Meeple or a Thrower, but I don't think Throwers are that good in this meta anymore. That's why Juju's a little bit further down. And then you need an offensive brawler, so no matter what, you need an offensive brawler that's going to create some pressure. Mortis is the one I probably hate facing off against the most. Edgar, Mini, you want those brawlers that are just going to relentlessly pressure, and then once they build up their utility, they're just going to win that matchup no matter what. And then you need a bit of a both zones brawler. So either that's a brawler that can poke around walls like a Lumi or a Mo, or that's a Stu that can easily pinch and be aggressive. Rico as well. There's quite a lot of these brawlers. But most of the time, you want to get the defensive lane and then push up to the offensive lane. Lastly, for Hot Zone, we have a Ring of Fire. So Ring of Fire is just a staple of Hot Zone. You should know how to play it by now. But if you don't, typically you send like two brawlers in the middle, whether that be your pressure brawler and your damage brawler, and then your zone time brawler. Absolutely, you want one brawler that is kind of poking around, you know, trying to confirm a kill or whatever, sneaking around, and then if you can get into the enemy bush, is great. You can set up a spawn trap there. So in terms of strategy here, you know, you got your first pick dominant brawlers, sixth pick aren't really that interesting to me on a map like Ring of Fire. It's all about strategies here. So zone time, you've got so many good zone time brawlers here. Again, the key is either they're supportive or they have high health that can get guaranteed zone time. Pressure brawlers aren't all that important on a map like this because it's just so many hard matchups for them. It's just all about damage. But yeah, just make sure you're soaking up as much zone time as possible. That's all this map's about. Now moving on to Knockout, our favorite game mode of them all. We love Knockout. Not really. Okay, Knockout, Bells Rock. As you saw by the best picks on your screen, Knockout is a bit of a weirder one because primarily on this map, for years and years, maybe not in the recent times, Throwers would always be a good last pick, but I only think like Sprout was a good last pick here. The only brawlers you've got to worry about are the bolts or the kitchies. That's all you've got to worry about right now. It's just mainly picking the best range brawlers, right? Like your Pipers are very good in this meta again. You've got your Jay Youngs, your Pels can be good, Grey can be used to hook through walls. But primarily, I think range is definitely back in this meta, but also like one good pressure brawler because again, they can push up behind that unbreakable wall. So we have Flare and Phoenix, so quite possibly the worst map in rotation right now, but definitely the worst knockout map. So this map is always a weird one because you want, like, it's just a lot of nonsense that goes on in this. It's just basically just going to camp until the final circle, and then you're going to win most of the time. So picking those best brawlers available. One of my favorite secret pick, it's not really a secret pick, but Mandy is one of my favorite brawlers here because you can just sit behind and snipe the opponents, and then you get your super and you should be able to win the round for the most part. But most of the time you want a sniper, you want a pressure brawler, and then yeah, flex. It's pretty simple in terms of these drafts because pressure brawlers are going to be good in late game, and all you need to do really is just camp it out until late game. Then you have a lot of health and then you should win. Your flex brawlers are going to be good at defending your snipers, and then your snipers are going to be good in the early game. Next up we have New Horizons. So again, another map that the pro players seem to hate because it is very, I don't know, it's a very campy map, and a lot of times, often you will just get outdrafted pretty easily. So your sixth picks here, you got to worry about the likes of like an Ali, a Bolt. Those are the main ones you got to worry about. Again, making sure that you got one range brawler easily to try and select the best one available. Your flex brawlers are going to be good as the game goes on. And then again, pressure. The pressures are good because if your opponents don't have a wall break or anything, and again, if you survive towards the late game, there's not a lot of room to maneuver, so your pressure brawlers are really going to start to win your games there. Lastly, for knockout, we have Out in the Open here, your best picks on your screen right here. So the strategy with Out in the Open is just all about gaining that grass control, trying to get a few snipes off, and then pushing the opponents back into the spawn. A wall break is not really as necessary as it used to be, but a wall break can be pretty good. So whether you've got Piper with super, whether you've got Pearl with super, Brock with super, those things are pretty nice to have, but again, not absolutely needed in this meta. What is absolutely needed is your ability to push your opponents back. So whether that's a Naja, you're starting to see her again a lot in Knockout, Pipers, your Pierces, your Byrons, those brawlers that tap and get you that control. That's what you want in a map like Out in the Open. But this Out in the Open is one of the most popular pro picks, so if you really want to learn a draft, definitely watch a monthly final with Out in the Open in play. But that's going to be it for today's video, guys. Again, this isn't extensive, and I'm not, saying this is like the best rank guide available. This is like a cheat sheet, and this is essentially, at a glance, you can just see the best brawlers inside of a game. This is what this type of video is for. It's for the people that are trying to get Masters, or at least like to Masters 2, I would say. And then if you really want to get to pro rank, that's where you need more in-depth knowledge and more like brawler matchups and those type of things. So yeah, that's going to be it. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And see you guys next time.